TV9 Digital. I am Adarsh Vepachedu. 31%, I repeat, 31% or nearly one-third of the people in 12 cities of India had tested seropositive for COVID-19 antibodies till December 2020, which is towards the end of the first wave. This essentially means that one-third of the urban population were exposed to COVID-19 and have recovered. This was found in a sero survey conducted by researchers from the Centre for Global Health Research, University of Toronto, Canada, and A. Velumani and C. Nikam of Thyrocare Labs. Just a quick recap on what a sero survey is. It involves testing of blood serum of a group of individuals in a population to trace the presence of antibodies. If you have antibodies, it means you were infected at some point and have recovered, all thanks to those antibodies. So 31% of urban population having antibodies by December 2020 means by now this number would have shot up by a lot, as we have seen an 8-fold increase in the number of cases during the second wave. Add to that the vaccination drive that is currently underway that is ensuring antibodies in those who take it. The number of people with immunity is bound to have gone up way beyond 31%. To try and understand what the sero survey results mean, I had a word with former president of Indian Medical Association, Dr. Rajeev Jayadevan, and this is what he had to say.
Many thanks, Dr. Jayadevan, for speaking to us. My first question to you is two-part. 31% urban population with antibodies by December 2020. So cut to present, where do you think we stand given that we are going towards the end of the second wave? And also, with the bulk of people getting infected in the first two waves, do you see the number of cases dropping during the third wave?
I do, because the number of people who are seropositive represents the number of people who have become immune to infection. So the more the seropositivity in terms of percentage, the more the number of protected people, and therefore, as you said, the less the likelihood that they will get infected in future waves.
Okay. Speaking about the number, 31% is what is being told till the end of 2020. 4 months down the line, it's May. Where do you think, conservative estimate, where do you think we stand when it comes to the seropositivity rate right now?
Yeah, you're aware that the published seropositivity can range anywhere from 10% across Kerala in February to 69% in Pune. So there are many figures. Obviously, India is a very large area, and therefore your seroprevalence cannot be uniform in all parts of the country. But across the board, like you said, it's about 25 to 30%. And considering this wave is at least 6 times as big, which means number of cases divided by time taken. It's a rough estimate. Number of cases divided by time taken. It's almost like distance traveled by time taken as speed. So considering it's approximately 6 times the size, we could go well in excess of 50% across the board.
Right. Doctor, immunity, if we were to talk about it, it's achieved in one of two waves. One, you get infected and develop antibodies, or two, vaccination. Currently, both of them are taking place and in large numbers in the country. Are we on track to achieving immunity at a large collective scale, and should we be calling it herd immunity of sorts?
Yes, the term herd immunity has been disputed in this instance, because this particular virus really does not fall into the classic definition of herd immunity. But we don't have a better word for the phenomenon of many people in a region being immune to the virus. So therefore, we will call it quote unquote herd immunity. Now, when the concept was introduced last year, people were talking about 70% to 80% being a cutoff range. Now, that in fact refers only to viruses that will come and go as a one-off phenomenon. As far as coronaviruses go, they come in multiple waves, and for whatever reason, for example, Japan is going through a 4th wave right now, and it's each wave is bigger than the other. So we really can't say that a particular threshold is going to work. But what we do know is, on an individual basis, if the individual is either vaccinated and immune, or achieved infection through immunity, through natural infection, followed perhaps by vaccination, they are very well set for a safe future, even if there was a wave in that region.
All right. Speaking about coronavirus, if I were to stress on that a little bit, why do you feel that herd immunity or something of that sort is not possible in coronavirus? And again, is it because it's not a natural virus? Is it tweaked to such an extent that herd immunity is something that cannot be possible in this case?
Yeah, coronavirus, the viruses come from different families, just like fungi come from different families, bacteria come from different families, mammals come from different families. Anyway, viruses have different families, and this particular virus belongs to what's called a coronavirus family. And there are 4 or 5 coronaviruses that, in fact, routinely infect man. And your average common cold that you get, about 1/3 of them happen to be one of the coronaviruses. They have different names, and we're not going to go into that.
Mhm.
229E and so on. But they all have a common feature. They come and they go, and they may infect the same person again and again. They do come in waves, and they spread fast from person to person. The other coronaviruses that are existing now, we are not
Mhm.
talking about the extinct ones. The ones that are existing now are not known to be dangerous ones, but even the most benign coronaviruses has caused deaths in the very frail and the very old. So back to your question, unlike say measles virus or polio virus that just come once, coronaviruses really don't have that. They don't have that tradition of just coming once and go, or coming once and leaving us. So therefore, as we define the immunity as we look forward, we'll really have to be very watchful about what terms we use for it. Which is why I said what we do know about this from the past year and a half experience is that, as I mentioned before, if you have developed immunity, it's good immunity for at least the intermediate term. We do not know how long it will last. It may last very long. You'd be surprised. It may last very long. In fact, there are strong indications from multiple research analysts and papers that that immunity to SARS-CoV-2 virus might be longer lasting than we think.
All right, all right. Doctor, this Zero survey, again, coming back to it, it has also thrown up some other interesting data. Now, as for this survey, different cities have seen cases peak at different times. And this is something we've known for a while now. Different cities and countries have different peaks. So, shouldn't we be using this information in calibrating our preparation and response more effectively? Do you feel we're doing it already? And what should we do on that front?
You're absolutely right. When we talk about India and third wave, it's a fairly simplistic expression. It's almost like a headline for a detailed article. So when you read the headline, you get an overall idea, but a headline really tell you the whole story. So what you said is absolutely right. I agree with you 100% that India is a extraordinarily large region on the planet, and this region has so many diverse areas. There are hills, and then there are deserts, and there are coastal areas. There are wealthy areas, there are impoverished areas, and so on. There's so much variation. Crowded areas, not so crowded areas, isolated areas, highly traveled areas, travel destinations, international connectivity. There are so many variables here. So therefore, as you rightly pointed out, there will be within the country there will be some variations about how the virus behaves, but for the most part, the second wave has taken everyone by surprise in one sense that it's started off almost at the same point in most places. So that's a rather intriguing observation. But there are some exceptions. For example, in Kerala, where I live, and we've been tracking it even long before the pandemic hit India. We've been tracking it from here. In Kerala, the observation is it's been more of a jagged edge rather than a single peak. We had a peak in April, and then a small one in May June period, and then one more in late October, and
Okay.
then in fact, I reported another peak in January. In fact, most of the national media covered it, including the Hindu and Times of India. So, and then this big peak that is coming along with the rest of the nation. So, as you rightly said, different areas have different peaks, and it has to be customized to the region. And as I mentioned, connectivity is different because in Kerala there's a substantial expatriate population, so people do come and go from other nations. So there's a greater likelihood that you may get variants that are not accustomed to this region.
Right, right. Dr. Jayadevan, another interesting factor I'd like to bring out here, the seropositivity among women appears to be higher as per the data that is out. There were similar findings, from the third national sero survey that was conducted between December 2020 and January 2021. Does this surprise you by any means? Because we do not see women really heading out of the houses too much. Why is it that the seropositivity is higher among women?
I do not know. I have not seen the data. I'm unable to comment on that. But having said that, I'll tell you, there can be external variables, what we call confounders. We call them confounders in statistics. When there is a variable beyond what we are looking at, like you said, there may be factors such as how often is there a difficulty? Is there a variation between access to medical care, for example? Say, for example, in certain states, men are more likely to get medical care than a woman for an equal amount of sickness, and so on. So we really have to think about that. And then we really have to think, for example, in Europe, if you look at it, more women are getting COVID-19 or are getting vaccinated. Why? Because I've worked in the West. I'll tell you about in the US, in our practice, 99% of our staff were women. And that's how it is. So there are a lot of variables here. So we really have to, without studying all of that, I can't say that the statistic mean anything. But across the board, I'll tell you from a biology standpoint, women or men are equally likely to get it. And women have a slight edge over men in terms of surviving not only COVID-19, but most other diseases.
If you like the information that I brought to you, make sure you like and share this video, and yes, subscribe to TV9 News on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.